He rejected 8 perfect models, but the one woman who stole his heart was the delivery girl who showed up 1 minute late. Before we begin, drop your city in the comments. When we're done, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Just a minute, just a single, fleeting minute. That was all it took to unravel Samantha Parker's night. She burst through the polished glass doors of the Skyview Tower like a gust of wind, her breath sharp in her chest, her daughter Julie clinging to her like a tiny anchor. The marble lobby stretched above her, tall ceilings and glittering chandeliers making her delivery uniform feel like a costume in the wrong play. The cooler bag, heavy with sushi, cut into her palm. She pressed the elevator button with her free hand, trying to tame the flyaway strands of hair sticking to her damp forehead. Behind her, Julie wrinkled her nose and whispered with the ruthless honesty only a child possessed. "Mommy, you smell like soy sauce and sweat." Samantha let out a short laugh, more exhale than sound. "And you smell like the strawberry candy you snuck from reception." Julie giggled, her tiny arms tightening around her mother's neck. The elevator dinged open. Samantha barely had time to lift her hand to knock before the apartment door swung wide. An elegant blonde, her hair swept into a glossy chignon, leaned against the frame with a look that could freeze water. She glanced at her diamond-studded watch. 1 minute late, she said, voice dripping with disdain. "I don't want it anymore. I can't stand people who don't meet deadlines." Samantha blinked, panting. "Miss, seriously? 1 minute? What was I supposed to do, leave my 4-year-old on the sidewalk, run a red light, and risk becoming sushi myself? Sorry, I'll remember to teleport next time." The blonde's lips curled. Poor people always have an excuse. Julie, her cheek pressed against her mother, shut his shoulder, looked up at the woman with wide, unblinking eyes. "Mommy?" she piped in, her voice high and cutting through the marble hush. "This lady looks like a wicked witch from a cartoon." The words hung in the air. Samantha froze. The blonde's jaw dropped. And from the side, leaning against the elevator doors in a steel gray suit, a man cleared his throat. He was tall, composed, his presence filling the space without effort. Nathaniel Hayes. The name carried weight in every financial column in New York. In that moment, however, he wasn't the ruthless CEO known for rejecting deals and 8 flawless models handpicked by his father, but a man smothering laughter behind an impeccably controlled expression. "Excuse me?" His voice was low, calm, threaded with steel. "If you don't want the order, I'll take it. I'm starving." Before the blonde could protest, Nathaniel extended a sleek black credit card, his tone impatient. "How much is it, Miss Parker?" Samantha, startled by his knowledge of her name, fumbled with the payment device. Julie whispered, "He looks like a dapper penguin." Nathaniel's eyebrow twitched upward. "I heard that," he murmured. He turned his sharp gaze back to Samantha. "It seems you two have a talent for leaving an impression." She tried to smile, though her cheeks burned. "And you look like a man who's never wasted a second in his life." "Almost never," he said smoothly, tapping his code into the machine. But then Julie's small body stiffened. At first, it sounded like a tiny cough, a tickle in her throat. Then it grew violent. She gasped, clutching at Samantha's jacket, her little chest heaving. "Julie, Julie, my love, breathe with me," Samantha begged, panic scraping her throat raw. But Julie's lips darkened, her breath snagged. The blonde woman stepped back, repulsed and uneasy. Nathaniel froze, watching for only a second, long enough for the old reflexes of control to take over. He dropped the bag of sushi onto the marble and pulled out his phone. "This is Nathaniel Hayes. I need an ambulance at Skyview Tower, apartment 3204. Child in severe respiratory distress. Now." Samantha clutched Julie, tears brimming. "She's going to be okay, right? Please, let's get her to the hospital." Nathaniel's voice cut through her panic like a scalpel. He was already pressing the elevator button again, car keys in his other hand. "But I don't even know you. And I don't know you." His tone softened, but his eyes were unflinching. "What I do know is your daughter needs help. Now." Julie wheezed, tiny fingers clawing at her mother's shirt. Samantha's heart lurched. There was no choice. She stepped into the elevator, whispering in her daughter's ear, "Everything will be okay, my love. Mommy's here. This elegant penguin will help us." Nathaniel ushered them into his sleek BMW, driving with the same ruthless precision he used in board meetings. Julie whimpered in the back seat, pressed against Samantha's chest. Nathaniel called the hospital mid-traffic, demanding a pediatric pulmonologist be ready. For once, Samantha was silent, watching this man who had no reason to care act as if her child's breath was the most urgent deal he'd ever negotiated. 15 minutes later, emergency room lights swallowed Julie. Samantha pleaded with the receptionist, offering to pay in installments, voice breaking. Please, she's just a child. All costs are on me, Nathaniel said, sliding the black card onto the counter. His voice was final, a contract sealed in air. Hours passed. When Dr. Martinez finally stepped out with a gentle smile, Samantha collapsed in relief. Julie was stable, an allergy-triggered bronchospasm, nothing permanent. She rushed to her daughter's side, cradling her, whispering, "My love, my brave girl." Julie, cheeks flushed with color, asked the first question that mattered to her. "Where's Uncle Penguin? He said he'd visit." Samantha glanced around. The chair beside her was empty. At reception, the nurse handed her a sleek card. On the back, in firm handwriting, "Hope Julie gets well. NH." He was gone. As she cradled her sleeping daughter in the taxi ride home, Samantha pressed the business card to her chest. "Just a minute late," she whispered to herself, "and everything changes." Her jaw tightened. Whatever this man thought, she wasn't a charity case. She would pay him back, every cent. Somewhere else in Manhattan, Nathaniel Hayes leaned back in his car, the city lights sliding across his sharp profile. For once, his schedule lay abandoned on the passenger seat. He told himself he had left the hospital because of business. He told himself it was logical. But as Julie's tiny voice, Uncle Penguin, echoed in his mind, Nathaniel realized a truth he couldn't file away in any report. For the first time in years, a minute had stolen his breath, and he wasn't sure he wanted it back. Samantha's sneakers squeaked against the immaculate marble of Hayes Enterprises. The building stretched up into the clouds, glass and steel reflecting the late morning sun, an architectural statement of wealth that had no place for a woman who delivered takeout on a scooter. She clutched Julie's hand tighter, aware of the receptionist's perfectly lacquered nails and the assessing glance that swept from her scuffed shoes to the too-thin jacket covering her shoulders. "Mr. Hayes is in a meeting," the receptionist said in a tone sugar-coated with dismissal. "You can leave a message." "It's personal," Samantha replied, trying to inject steel into her voice. "I'll wait." Julie swung her legs against the plush lobby chair, humming to herself. The minutes crawled. Samantha smoothed the creases in her faded jeans, cheeks hot with shame, then lifted her chin higher. She had promised herself she would not be anyone's charity case, not even the CEO's. The elevator doors slid open with a sigh, and there he was, Nathaniel Hayes, all sharp lines and immaculate tailoring, stepping out with a folder under his arm. Beside him, his father, Henry Hayes, moved with the precision of a man who had never rushed for anything in his life. His silver hair gleamed, his cufflinks flashing under the lights. For just a heartbeat, Nathaniel's stride faltered. His eyes met Samantha's, widening with genuine surprise. "Samantha? How is Julie?" "She's fine," Samantha said quickly, rising to her feet. "Thanks to you. But I didn't come here for that. I came to talk about the money." She pulled a small notebook from her bag, its cover bent, pages stuffed with receipts. "Whatever you spent at the hospital, I'll pay it back. Every penny. It might take me months, maybe years, but There's no need." Nathaniel's reply was crisp, automatic, the kind of answer he gave to a subordinate in a meeting. He moved toward the elevator again. "Don't you dare walk away from me, Nathaniel Hayes." The words came louder than she intended, echoing across the marble hall. Heads turned. The receptionist froze mid-keystroke. Julie blinked up at her mother, wide-eyed. Samantha's voice cracked but didn't break. "I work hard for every dollar. I'm not some project you can buy off with a swipe of your black card. I don't take charity." Nathaniel stopped, pivoted. For the first time, his mask cracked fully, revealing not irritation, but something dangerously close to admiration. "How much do you make a month?" he asked. "That's none of your business." "It is if you're determined to repay me." His eyes locked on hers. "Do you have any idea how long it would take you to pay back $300 delivering sushi?" The number hit her like a slap. She had guessed 2, maybe 3,000, 5,000. Her mouth went dry, but she pressed on. "Then it'll take as long as it takes. Write my name down. I'll pay you back. I keep my promises." Henry's voice cut through the tension, low and smooth, the sound of velvet concealing steel. Admirable. Stubborn, but admirable. He stepped closer, his gaze flicking between Samantha's flushed face and his son's rigid posture. "You know, Nathaniel, this could be the solution to your image problem." "What?" Nathaniel snapped. Henry ignored him. He turned to Samantha, smiling as though unveiling a masterstroke to shareholders. "My son has refused 8 suitable matches. 8. Beautiful, educated women, all with the right pedigree, the right families. But you..." His eyes gleamed. "You are real, authentic. A single mother fighting against the world with nothing but grit and humor. Do you have any idea how refreshing that story would be in this city? Samantha blinked. Story? What are you even talking about? I want to hire you. Henry reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope thick with papers. He placed it on the sleek table between them. Pretend to be Nathaniel's girlfriend. Public events, charity dinners, interviews. Convince the world my son has finally chosen love over status. Samantha laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. You want me to fake date your son? That's insane. It's practical, Henry corrected. You need money. My son needs stability. You two together? Perfect. The press will eat it alive. He slid the envelope closer. Julie's tuition paid for 5 years, $10,000 for every event, and a $50,000 bonus when we amicably part ways. Security, opportunity, a better future for your child. Samantha's hands trembled around her coffee cup. Steam blurred her vision. She thought of Julie's little inhaler, the stack of unpaid bills, the landlord's warning note. It was the kind of deal she would have mocked on any other night. What if Nathaniel says no? She whispered. Leave that to me, Henry said, rising with effortless grace. My son is stubborn, but not foolish. He'll understand this is for everyone's benefit. Nathaniel's voice came from the doorway, low and sharp. Understand what? Both of them turned. He stood there in a fresh shirt, damp hair curling at his temples, eyes blazing. I heard everything. The hospital, the contract, the penguin in a suit. Samantha's stomach plummeted. Henry's smile didn't falter. Excellent. Saves me the trouble of repeating myself. Dad, Nathaniel's voice was iron. What the hell are you doing? What I've always done, Henry said calmly. Solving problems. You need a wife. She needs stability. It's arithmetic. Simple. Clean. Samantha shot to her feet. I didn't agree, and I'm not for sale. Henry leaned closer, whispering like a conspirator who already owned the room. Think of Julie. Think of what this could mean for her. The silence that followed was unbearable. Samantha stared at the envelope, the weight of her daughter heavy in her arms even when Julie wasn't there. Nathaniel looked between her and his father, the world tilting. At last, Samantha's voice cut through the air, barely above a whisper. God help me. But I think I have no choice. Her fingers closed around the envelope. Henry's smile sharpened, victory sealed in his eyes. Nathaniel felt a chill, as if he'd just watched his father sign a contract in blood. And yet, beneath the boardroom-trained steel of his gaze, something softer stirred. Admiration, fear, a flicker of hope he couldn't explain. Because the woman who had called him a penguin, who had nearly upended his perfectly ordered life with a tray of champagne and a child's desperate cough, was now stepping, however reluctantly, into his world. A deal had been struck, but for Nathaniel, the real question wasn't whether Samantha would play along. It was whether he could survive the lie without losing the only woman who had ever made him feel real. The grand ballroom of the Museum of Modern Art looked like it had been carved from light itself. Golden chandeliers dripped crystals from the ceiling, and spotlights slid over polished marble, catching the sparkle of diamonds and sequins. Waiters moved like a school of fish in black and white, trays of champagne gliding above their heads. Samantha Parker stood in the service corridor, her back pressed to the wall, her breath shallow, as her supervisor fussed with her borrowed black dress and whispered, "Remember, smile and stay invisible. These people can make or break us." Invisible. If only. She tugged at the hem of the dress that wasn't hers, her fingers catching on the threadbare lining. Julie's voice from earlier that evening still echoed in her ears. "You look like a princess." Samantha had smiled at her daughter, but now, staring at the sea of high society through the doorway, she felt more like a trespasser sneaking into a kingdom guarded by velvet ropes and polite cruelty. The music swelled. She stepped forward, balancing a tray of champagne flutes that cost more than her monthly rent. For the first few minutes, she managed, "Would you like a glass?" "Of course, ma'am." "Enjoy your evening, sir." A fragile rhythm, one that calmed her shaking hands. Then she saw him. Nathaniel Hayes, standing across the ballroom, tuxedo perfectly tailored, hair slicked back into something sharper than glass. He was talking to James Morrison, the man whose signature controlled half the city's financial arteries. At Nathaniel's side, glowing like a warning flare, was Victoria Lane. Crimson silk clung to her body, her smile practiced, her eyes sharp as razors. Samantha nearly dropped her tray. "Excuse me," a voice, nasal, impatient. An older woman draped in diamonds peered at her like she was part of the decor that had come to life. "Champagne." Yes, ma'am. Samantha lowered the tray, keeping her eyes down, fighting to steady her hand. Finally, the woman muttered, plucking a glass. Service is appalling these days. Samantha's cheeks burned. She wanted to say something clever, something biting, but this wasn't the delivery lobby. This was their world. Here, she really was supposed to be invisible. She turned to retreat toward the kitchen, relief within reach. Samantha? Her name, spoken clearly, cutting through the music. Every head turned. Nathaniel was striding toward her, his expression unreadable. Victoria trailed behind him, eyes narrowing. Lips curving in a smile that wasn't a smile at all. Samantha's pulse thundered in her ears. She tightened her grip on the tray, suddenly aware that the entire ballroom, hundreds of wealthy, judgmental strangers, was watching her. Good evening, sir, she blurted, trying for professionalism, but her voice betrayed her. What are you doing here? Nathaniel didn't play along. I might ask you the same, he said, his voice lower than the music but somehow louder than all of it. Extra work, she answered, tilting the tray so the champagne didn't spill. Julie needs new meds. Rent's late. You know how it is. Victoria's laugh cut in, smooth and sharp. Nathaniel, aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? His jaw tightened. Victoria, this is Samantha Parker. He hesitated. My girlfriend. The word dropped like a stone in the room. Samantha's heart slammed against her ribs. Girlfriend, not employee, not delivery girl. Girlfriend. Victoria's smile thinned. She extended a manicured hand. Ah, so you're the delivery girl. Her tone suggested she'd found a stray cat in the kitchen. How charming. Samantha forced her lips into a polite curve. Nice to meet you. Victoria's eyes flicked over the borrowed dress. What an interesting choice of outfit. Very affordable. Samantha's cheeks flushed again, but she didn't shrink. She leaned forward just slightly, her voice honeyed with faux sweetness. Thank you. I chose something that wouldn't draw too much attention. I don't like to be vulgar. The pause was delicious. Several guests, eavesdropping, stifled their laughter. Victoria's smile cracked. You've been traveling, haven't you? Victoria pressed, trying to regain control. Paris, perhaps? Samantha's heart lurched. Travel. She hadn't been farther than the next borough in years. Oh yes, she said quickly, bluffing. Paris. I saw the Eiffel Tower. Very tall, very and the Louvre. Though honestly, the Mona Lisa looks like she just heard a private joke. That earned a ripple of laughter from the table. Even James Morrison chuckled into his wine glass. Samantha blinked, startled. Her own nervousness had somehow turned into entertainment. Nathaniel's eyes softened as he watched. She was out of place, out of her depth, yet somehow commanding the room more effortlessly than any model on Henry's list. But just as Samantha began to breathe, the ground betrayed her. The marble floor gleamed slick underfoot. Her heels slipped. The tray tilted in horrifying slow motion. 12 crystal flutes arced through the golden light, then shattered across Nathaniel's immaculate tuxedo. Champagne cascaded down his chest in rivers of gold. The ballroom froze. Oh my God, Samantha gasped, dropping to her knees among shards. I'm so sorry. Victoria's gasp was sharp enough to cut glass. That was Dom Perignon. $800 a bottle. I'll pay for it, Samantha blurted, fumbling with napkins, blotting Nathaniel's soaked lapels. I'll work extra shifts. I'll sell my scooter, Nathaniel caught her hands firm but gentle. Stop. It's fine. You're drenched, she whispered, panic rising. Everyone's staring. I'm going to lose my job. And breathe, Nathaniel said softly, just as he had in the elevator with Julie. His calm was a tether, pulling her back from the edge. He even smiled. Besides, maybe it's the floor's fault. Who makes marble this slippery? Samantha blinked, then, unable to stop herself, snorted. Exactly. Someone should put up a sign. Caution, waitress killing floor. The crowd laughed. Even the auctioneer smothered a grin. Victoria, livid, turned away. Nathaniel's shoulders shook once, then again, before he burst into a low, genuine laugh. For the first time in years, his laughter wasn't a polished performance. It was real. Later, as Samantha scrubbed her flour-dusted hands in the service sink, she muttered, I can't believe I drowned the man who saved my daughter. Julie's never going to let me live this down. A voice behind her, smooth as ever. On the contrary, I found it refreshing. She spun. Henry Hayes leaned in the doorway, tuxedo gleaming, eyes unreadable but sharp with interest. He wasn't laughing. He looked at her like she was a stock he'd just discovered, one he intended to buy before anyone else noticed its value. Samantha's breath caught. The air seemed to shift, heavy with possibilities and traps. And as the muffled pop of another champagne cork echoed from the ballroom, she realized this wasn't just about sushi deliveries or spilled glasses anymore. She had walked into a story someone else was already writing, and she had no idea who was holding the pen. The airport boards flipped from orange to red like a row of tiny alarms. Canceled, canceled, canceled. Samantha stood beneath them, clutching the handle of the borrowed carry-on that clicked every few feet because one wheel was stubborn. People groaned, phones rang, and a child somewhere burst into tears big enough to echo. Nathaniel returned from a battle at the airline counter with 2 coffees and a look that said the weather didn't care about anyone's calendar, not even his. Stormfront stalled over Boston, he said, handing her a cup. Everything grounded until morning. Do they know I have a meeting with a man who signs checks like he's signing autographs? She blew on the lid. Because I can show them my rent bill. He watched the boards reflect in her eyes, that restless, resilient glitter. We'll drive, he decided. There's an inn I know off I-95. We sleep a few hours and head out at dawn. Out on the curb, the snow was still pretty, those first innocent flakes that look charming before they pile up as consequences. The BMW slid into the white night like a seal slipping into a cold ocean. Samantha tucked her legs under herself, watching streetlights turn to smears and then to nothing as the highway swallowed them. The radio murmured weather warnings and soft jazz. Julie's last video call still hummed in her chest. Be brave, Mommy. Penguins like snow. Do they? Samantha said, smiling to herself. I heard that, Nathaniel said, not taking his eyes off the road. For the record, some penguins prefer boardrooms to blizzards. Coward. Efficient, he corrected, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him. By the time the highway signs blurred with frost, the snow had turned heavy, punishing, erasing lane lines and patience. They found the inn at the edge of a little town that had folded up for the night. A hand-painted sign swung over a porch, the fir hearth. Inside, the lobby smelled like wood smoke and cinnamon. With a Christmas wreath still bravely hanging though January had marched past, the receptionist looked ready for bed and murder. Last room, she apologized, sliding over an old brass key. King bed, but the sofa's new and the fireplace works. Kitchen's closed. The storm stole the chef. The storm likes drama, Samantha said. The room looked like the kind of place you'd whisper in. A stone fireplace, a fat armchair, a couch you could imagine telling secrets to, a bed that took up too much space like a smug cat. Samantha set her carry-on by the sofa with declaration-level finality. That's me. You are not sleeping on a sofa while I hog a bed like a tyrant, Nathaniel said. Sorry. I've slept on delivery mats, she said, kicking off her boots. I've slept on the floor by Julie's crib. I've slept in sitting positions that would make a chiropractor faint. I'll be fine. We'll split the night, he bargained. 2 hours bed, 2 hours sofa. Trade. Democratic. Your spine is worth more to investors than mine. That's not how spines work. She squinted at him. Did you just argue for socialism in a roadside inn? Don't quote me, he said, loosening his tie. They were both laughing before they realized they were. It was quiet laughter, the kind that doesn't need witnesses. The storm pressed its face to the window like a curious animal. Somewhere in the walls, old pipes clanked like friendly ghosts. 20 questions, Samantha said suddenly, curling into the armchair by the fire. Julie says it's how you find out who someone is without getting caught. Nathaniel raised a brow. Interrogations disguised as games. I approve. I'll start. Favorite food? He stalled, which was not his style. That depends on the GDP and the fiscal outlook. She rolled her hand. Don't be boring. He stared into the fire. Cheeseburgers, he confessed finally, like a man admitting an affair. The shameful perfect kind at 2 a.m., grease that tastes like absolution. Samantha tried not to delight too obviously. The elegant penguin eats cheeseburgers. I feel less alone on this planet. My turn, he said. What did you want to be when you were 8? A kid with a mother who didn't have to work doubles, she said, then softened the truth with a smile. An art teacher. I like watching people make messes and call it progress. He looked at her carefully, filing that away not like data, but like treasure. They traded questions like they were crossing a river on stones. Favorite sound, Julie's morning. Mom? Worst haircut. Half her head once. Long story, hat season. Secret talent. He could play Debussy. He played it like he was apologizing. Biggest fear for him, being loved for his balance sheet. For her, elevators and promises. Elevators? He asked, genuinely puzzled. Tiny rooms that move? With doors that may or may not open? Designed by a sadist? She shook her head. Stairs tell you the truth. Your legs burn. You know you're earning it. Promises? Promises are elevators, she said softly, surprising herself. You step in and hope the doors open on the floor you dreamed of. He went quiet, eyes on the flames like they could answer for him. She let the silence sit. He wasn't the only one learning patience. By 10, the inn had tucked itself in. The wind bullied the windows. Their stomachs negotiated with them, using increasingly aggressive tactics. Kitchen's closed, he said, checking the phone. I can cook, she said, peeking into the tiny guest kitchenette. I am a single mother. I possess the ancient magic of turning nothing into pancakes. His eyes brightened with a child's conspiracy. Pancakes are a night food? Pancakes are a love language. She found flour, eggs, milk that swore it wasn't expired. He rolled up his sleeves like he was about to acquire a company. You can be my assistant, she decreed. Stir gently. Don't assault the batter. It has feelings. It's flour and feelings, she repeated. Everything went beautifully until he decided to flip one like an Olympic athlete. The pancake soared, turned, considered its options, and belly flopped onto the burner. A dish towel, in solidarity, caught flame. Fire, Nathaniel said, astonishingly calm. Do not drown it. She ordered, snatching for the lid. They smothered it together, the room filling with a smoke that smelled like a campfire trying to apologize. When the alarm didn't scream, they both burst into laughter so hard she had to press her palms to the counter. He reached to brush flour from her hair, and his hand lingered, tentative, the air between them warmer than the hearth. You almost burned down an inn, she said, breathless. You almost set a towel on fire, he countered. I learned that from you. He looked at her like people look over cliffs, slowly, carefully, with awe and a little terror. She felt the pull too, the inches, the if we lean in. The storm thumped the window like a drum. Somewhere a door down the hall shut softly. They stood inside a small circle of light and scent, batter, wood, laundry soap from her sweater. An accidental intimacy that felt less like an accident and more like the minute you stop pretending you aren't falling. Pizza, he whispered, ridiculous. We could order pizza. She didn't move away. We could, she whispered back. They didn't. They ate the salvageable pancakes on the floor by the fire, knees almost touching, trading bites and awful jokes. He took the couch. She took the bed. She thought she wouldn't sleep. She did. Dawn came gray and uncommitted. The storm had turned the world into an eraser. They scraped snow from the car, breath fogging, and found the highway open but sulking. The meeting later that morning went strangely well. James Morrison had a soft spot for stories that didn't sound like press releases. Samantha didn't say much. She didn't need to. The way Nathaniel looked at her, like she was a hinge his life had swung on, was world enough. On the drive back, her phone began vibrating like it had a fever. At first it was a buzz every few minutes, then a swarm. She frowned, opened a text, and felt her stomach drop like an elevator cut free. A headline shouted from a gossip site. Paparazzi shots. CEO's girlfriend gorges on luxury. Shopping spree sparks questions. Images stitched like a verdict. Samantha leaving a boutique with bags she hadn't picked. Hair foiled at a salon she'd sat in because Henry's assistant said, "Just an hour, trust me." A credit card blur that looked damning. The comments were a bonfire. "Let me see," Nathaniel said, breaking too quickly. He scanned. A muscle flickered in his jaw. "These will pass." "Will they?" Her voice was very calm. It felt like it belonged to someone watching her own life across a window. "Because I didn't buy any of that. You know that." "I do," he said, eyes still moving fast, already calculating angles like a chessboard. "PR will get ahead of it. We'll issue a statement. We pause appearances, let it cool, then..." "Pause appearances?" He flinched at how the words sounded out loud. "Just until it calms down. Investors get nervous. My father..." "Your father," she repeated, the two words tasting like the first cold breath after a fever. "Of course." "This isn't about you," he tried, meaning the opposite. "It's about..." "Reputation," she supplied. "Brand. Stability. The spreadsheet." He exhaled. "I need to protect the company. And I need to pick up my kid from daycare and not teach her that when men get scared, they set women on the curb." She folded her phone with hands that wanted to shake and refused. "Pull over at the next exit." "Samantha, next exit." He did. The car idled beneath a billboard that said, "Welcome to somewhere friendly." She opened the door. The wind slapped her. She leaned in, looked him straight on, and gave him the kindest version of a truth so he wished she didn't have to say. "You carried my daughter when she couldn't breathe," she said. "You made pancakes like a pyromaniac. You looked at me last night like you were seeing me and not the story. Don't let a headline decide you're a coward." He swallowed. He was not used to being called that. He was not used to the part of him that wondered if it was temporarily true. "I will fix this," he said, because that was the only sentence he knew in emergencies. "Then fix it inside yourself first," she said softly, and closed the door. She told Mrs. Rodriguez she'd be late. She told her own heart to be quiet. She told the internet nothing. By midnight, the reporters were outside her building like crows that had found something shiny. She went out the back, a grocery bag in one hand, her phone off. Nathaniel watched 3 different networks pull apart the same photos with 3 different levels of hypocrisy. His father called twice. The second time, Henry's voice sounded like velvet wrapped around a hammer. "We ride this out, then we pivot. If necessary, you realign with someone less combustible." "She's not combustible," he said, and hung up, and wished he believed his own certainty. When he finally got to Samantha's door, Julie answered with a solemn face that made him taller and smaller at once. "Mommy's busy," she said, "and you're an evil penguin." He crouched to eye level. "I might be a scared one," he said carefully. "Then stop," Julie advised, as if telling a faucet to quit leaking. "Mommy says fear is a liar." He laughed once, helplessly, because 5-year-olds should not be this precise. "Tell her I'm sorry," he said. "Tell her I'm working on it." Julie studied him, then nodded, as if granting bail. The door closed. He stood in the hall listening to the quiet on the other side and thought about balloons, how the easiest thing in the world is to let go and blame the sky. On the way back to the car, his phone lit again. Another headline, another cropped frame, another angle that made Samantha into a story she hadn't written. He saw his own reflection in the black screen for half a second, expensive, guarded, almost convincing, and finally recognized the flaw. This was the version of himself that always chose the elevator because it was faster, the one who forgot to ask where it was going. Snow started again, thin and mocking. He tucked his hands into his coat like a kid. Somewhere, in a kitchen that smelled like pancakes and smoke, a woman was trying to believe that dignity was enough armor. Somewhere, a little girl was teaching grown men how to be brave. He had asked for a pause. The universe was about to show him how much it cost to freeze a heart mid-beat. The Grand Hotel Plaza glittered like a jewel box cracked open on 5th Avenue. Paparazzi bulbs flared outside, turning every limousine door into a stage entrance. Samantha pressed her back against the kitchen's cold tile wall, heart rattling like cutlery in a drawer. The catering uniform they'd given her tonight was a size too big again, sleeves rolled twice, apron strings digging into her waist. She pulled at the collar, as if rearranging fabric could disguise how out of place she felt. Mrs. Rodriguez's borrowed pearl earrings dangled from her lobes, and she could hear Julie's small, excited voice from earlier. "You'll be amazing, Mommy, like a superhero in a dress." She whispered to her reflection in the metal refrigerator door. "Superheroes don't serve shrimp cocktails, kid." "Parker," her supervisor barked, shoving a tray into her hands. "Cocktail hour, smisho. Please smile, and for God's sake, no accidents tonight." The words hit harder than they should have. Samantha's cheeks flushed with memory, champagne exploding across Nathaniel's chest, the gasps, the laughter. She steadied the tray, lifted her chin, and stepped into the ballroom. The room was a cathedral of wealth. Gold candelabras flickered over marble floors polished so bright they mirrored her every step. Guests shimmered in couture gowns, tuxedos tailored within an inch of their lives. Samantha moved between them like a shadow with a tray, doling out flutes of champagne while praying to remain invisible. For 10 blessed minutes, it worked. Then she heard it. Nathaniel Hayes, what a delightful surprise. Victoria Lane's voice was champagne poured over ice, bubbly, but sharp enough to sting. Samantha froze. She didn't even have to look up to know. The crimson silk dress swept across the marble like spilled wine. Victoria's diamonds caught the chandelier light and hurled it back at the crowd, and at her side, of course, was Nathaniel. Her stomach plummeted. She'd promised herself she could survive this charade, but she hadn't accounted for her. Nathaniel's eyes swept the room like searchlights, and when they found Samantha, his jaw tightened. For a second, she thought about ducking behind a marble column and never coming out, but the tray in her hands anchored her. Then he was in front of her. "Samantha," he said, voice pitched low enough for her to feel the rumble in her bones. She scrambled for her professional mask. "Good evening, sir. What are you—" "This is Samantha Parker," Nathaniel said, cutting her off. His hand brushed the small of her back. "My girlfriend." The room stilled again, like a stage awaiting the next line. Samantha felt the heat of every gaze, every whisper. Girlfriend, the word wrapped around her like velvet and barbed wire. Victoria's laugh cracked the silence. "So it's true. The delivery girl. She extended her jeweled hand with a smile that never reached her eyes. Enchanté. Samantha set the tray down before her hands betrayed her. She met Victoria's gaze head-on, inhaled and smiled back. Sweet, steady, deceptively gentle. Nice to meet you. That's a stunning dress. Very theatrical. Bold choice. Almost makes the chandeliers jealous. A ripple of laughter spread through the surrounding guests. Victoria's smile froze. So, Samantha, Victoria purred, circling like a cat. Do you travel much? I imagine it must be difficult given your circumstances. Samantha's heart pounded, but something inside her, the same steel that had made her argue about a single minute in a marble lobby, rose to meet the challenge. I travel every day, she said. Up and down stairwells, across burrows in the rain, chasing subway doors with a bag full of sushi. My passport might be empty, but my legs have seen more miles than most private jets. There was another ripple of laughter. Even James Morrison, the man Nathaniel was courting for a billion-dollar merger, chuckled into his champagne. Victoria tilted her head, searching for blood. And do you find our world intimidating? Samantha pretended to consider it. Not intimidating, just different. In my neighborhood, people throw salt around to get rid of bad energy. Here, I think they just smile while they serve it in crystal glasses. The room erupted. Guests whispered, laughed, even clapped. Someone muttered, refreshing, like they'd discovered an endangered species. Nathaniel, standing stiff beside her, should have been furious. Instead, Samantha saw the smallest twitch of a smile betray him. His eyes, usually honed like scalpels, softened in wonder. Then the orchestra struck a high, glittering note, and the auctioneer's voice boomed. Next item, a vintage pearl necklace from the Astor collection. Starting bid, $20,000. Samantha took a step back, tray trembling, and the polished marble betrayed her again. Her heel slipped, the tray jerked. 12 glasses leapt into the air, liquid gold arcing in a glittering spray. Time fractured. Champagne rained down in a glittering cascade, drenching Nathaniel's pristine tuxedo. The crowd gasped as one, crystals shattered on marble like frozen bells. Oh my God. Samantha dropped to her knees among the shards. I'm so sorry, Victoria's voice sliced through the silence. That's vintage Dom Perignon, $800 a bottle, and she spilled it. I'll pay, Samantha blurted, blotting Nathaniel's lapel with napkins. I'll work doubles, I'll sell my scooter, Nathaniel caught her trembling hands. Enough. It was an accident. You're soaked, she whispered, panicked. Everyone's staring. They'll fire me. He looked down at her, champagne dripping from his hair, and then, to her shock, he laughed. Not the tight, polite laugh he reserved for boardrooms, but a deep, helpless laugh that made his shoulders shake. The floor, Samantha whispered fiercely, trying to salvage her dignity. It's a death trap. Someone should put up a sign, caution, waitress killing marble. More laughter rippled through the ballroom. Even the auctioneer chuckled. Victoria's lips thinned into a furious slash. Nathaniel leaned closer, his voice low enough for only Samantha to hear. You're gonna ruin me, he said. But there was no anger in it, only awe. And that was when Samantha realized something dangerous. For the first time in years, she wasn't the invisible woman in the room. She was the story. The rain had stopped, but the city wasn't clean. It glittered the way a knife does when you hold it under light. Beautiful, dangerous. Samantha Parker's world had become a headline she hadn't written. Her name dragged across gossip shows like it was currency. Gold digger, social climber, schemer. Words she never asked for. Words her daughter might one day repeat without knowing what they meant. Tonight, the Grand Hotel Plaza wasn't just another event. It was an execution ground, velvet-draped and diamond-studded, where she'd be paraded like an actress reading from someone else's script. And the executioner? Henry Hayes, smiling, calculating, sipping champagne as though he already owned the ending. Just keep your head down, Margaret, her boss, whispered as she adjusted Samantha's bow tie backstage. Serve, smile, survive. But fate had other plans. The moment Nathaniel strode into the ballroom, every conversation hushed. His presence hit the air like a storm front. Cameras clicked, socialites straightened their posture, and there, on his arm, a woman in a midnight blue gown, Samantha. She felt the weight of 100 eyes scrape over her skin. Her hand trembled against Nathaniel's sleeve, and he leaned down, voice pitched low. Breathe. She obeyed, if only because Julie's little voice still echoed in her ears. Mommy, superheroes don't get scared. Then came Victoria Lane, dressed in red silk, the kind that glowed like spilled blood under chandeliers. She appeared at Nathaniel's side with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Nathaniel," she purred, ignoring Samantha until the last possible moment. "Introduce us." Nathaniel did. "Victoria, this is Samantha Parker, my girlfriend." The word fell into the ballroom like a thunder. Clap. Samantha nearly dropped her champagne glass and the crowd inhaled as one, scenting scandal. Victoria's laugh was too sweet, too bright. "Ah, the delivery girl. How quaint." She extended her hand, expecting Samantha to shrink. Samantha met her gaze, her lips curling into a deceptively soft smile. "Charmed. That's a gorgeous dress. Very theatrical. You almost outshine the exit signs." A ripple of laughter spread across the guests. Victoria's eyes flickered, sharp with fury. She tried again, probing, sneering, but every barb Samantha deflected with wit sharper than any diamond edge. Each answer drew the crowd closer to her side. Nathaniel, watching, should have been horrified. Instead, something inside him cracked open wider. The woman he had written off as a temporary arrangement was surviving in this lion's den with nothing but humor and honesty. No training, no script, just raw truth, dressed in borrowed satin. But then the floor betrayed her again. One slick step on the marble, and the tray tilted. Champagne flutes somersaulted in glittering arcs. Liquid gold cascaded down Nathaniel's tuxedo. Silence fell like a blade. Victoria gasped, triumphant. "Dom Perignon, $800 a bottle. I'll pay," Samantha blurted, fumbling for napkins, her face burning. "I'll work doubles. I'll sell my scooter." Nathaniel caught her hands before she could shred herself further. "Stop," he said, drenched but oddly calm. "It's fine." "No, it's not everyone's watching." "Then let them watch," he murmured. And then, against every instinct, the CEO of Hayes Enterprises laughed. A deep, unguarded laugh that rolled through the ballroom like thunder after lightning. The crowd joined in. Applause, whistles, murmurs. Samantha froze, realizing she had just undone Victoria Lane with nothing more than a spill and a joke about waitress killing marble. But Henry Hayes was watching too. Oh, his smile wasn't amusement, it was victory. Later in the hotel kitchen, as Samantha scrubbed champagne from her borrowed uniform, Henry appeared, immaculate tuxedo, glass of whiskey, eyes gleaming with calculation. "You were magnificent out there," he said softly. "Do you know how long I've tried to make my son laugh like that? And you do it without effort." "I almost set the place on fire," she muttered. "Which is precisely why they'll never forget you. Samantha, you're real. You're everything this city doesn't expect. That's what makes you valuable." He slid an envelope across the table, thick, heavy, humming with money. "Julie's tuition, 5 years, plus $10,000 for every appearance, $50,000 at the end." Samantha stared at it as though it were poison. "You're asking me to sell myself." "I'm offering you a contract," Henry corrected smoothly. "You solve your problems. Nathaniel solves his. Everyone wins." Her throat closed. Julie needs her medicine. Julie needs school. Julie needs... "Think of your daughter," Henry said, reading her silence like a ledger. "Wouldn't you trade a little dignity for her future?" Before she could answer, a shadow filled the doorway. Nathaniel stood there, tie gone, shirt collar open, hair damp. His eyes flicked from the contract to his father's smug smile to Samantha's trembling hands. "I heard everything," he said. His voice was sharper than the winter wind. "Every word, including the part where I'm apparently too stupid to notice when I'm being manipulated." Samantha wanted to sink through the floor. "Nathaniel, not you." His eyes locked on Henry. Him. Henry didn't flinch. "I'm protecting you, son. You need a woman who balances you, not one who embarrasses you in front of investors." Nathaniel stepped closer, his voice lowering into a growl. "She doesn't embarrass me. She reminds me I'm alive." Henry's eyebrow arched. "Alive doesn't build empires. Live doesn't stabilize stocks. Alive doesn't keep this family's name carved on skyscrapers." "Maybe I don't care about skyscrapers anymore," Nathaniel said. The room went silent, as though the old walls themselves were shocked. Samantha's breath caught. She had never seen Nathaniel look so dangerous, not cold and polished, but blazing. "You think you're immune to scandal?" Henry pressed. "Look outside. Reporters are tearing her apart. You want to tie yourself to that?" Nathaniel turned, meeting Samantha's wide, frightened eyes. For once, he didn't calculate. He didn't check his watch. He didn't measure the cost. "I already am," he said. He stepped past his father, pulled the envelope from the counter, and tore it in half. The sound was sharp, final, like a contract dissolving in fire. Henry's smile faltered. Nathaniel faced Samantha fully now, his voice carrying the steadiness of boardroom deals and the tremor of something far more dangerous. Samantha Parker, you were supposed to be a distraction, a name on a list, a lie, but you— His throat worked. You spilled champagne on me, called me a penguin, and showed me what it means to be human. I can't go back to the man I was before you walked into that lobby 1 minute late. The words struck her harder than Henry's check. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Nathaniel dropped to one knee. The room tilted, not from marble or champagne this time, but from shock. Gasps rippled through the kitchen staff peering from the doorway. Even Henry's glass wavered in his hand. From his pocket, Nathaniel pulled a small velvet box. His hands, usually steady as steel, shook. Inside, a diamond flared under the harsh kitchen lights. I don't want a contract, he said. I don't want a performance. I don't want 8 models picked by my father. I want you and Julie. I want pancakes at midnight and Jell-O in hospital rooms. I want to be the man who stops the car when you say someone needs help. Samantha Parker, will you marry me? For real, not for headlines, for us. The kitchen spun. Samantha pressed a flour-dusted hand to her mouth, laughter and sobs tangled in her throat. You're insane, she whispered. A stubborn, impossible, ridiculous penguin. Is that a yes? His eyes were raw, stripped of armor. She didn't answer with words. She dropped the napkin, stepped forward, and kissed him. Flour, smoke, champagne, and all. The kitchen staff erupted in cheers. Somewhere beyond the swinging doors, the auctioneer tried to resume the event, his voice wobbling against the thunder of applause that had spread through the ballroom. Henry Hayes stared at his son, at the woman in his arms, at the shards of his carefully laid plans. For once, the old titan looked almost human, almost proud. Later, as Samantha leaned against Nathaniel in the back seat of the BMW, Julie perched between them like a tiny queen. She whispered, Do you know what you just did in there? He glanced at her, eyes softer than she'd ever seen. Yes, I stopped pretending. Julie yawned, curling into his side. Does this mean you're not an evil penguin anymore? Nathaniel smiled, kissed the top of her head. No, princess. It means I'm your penguin now, forever. And as the city lights blurred against the wet windows, Samantha realized the truth she'd been running from since that night in the Skyview Tower. 1 minute late had cost her a job, 1 minute late had saved her daughter's life, and 1 minute late had brought her face to face with the man who, against every plan, every scandal, every wall between their worlds, would become her forever. The best mistake of her life,